Hello, hello, and welcome to PD in Your PJs. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight to talk about some of our favorite apps to use with Seesaw. You should hear my voice talking now. I do want you to know that we're recording the session and you will receive that in an email shortly after we conclude tonight. The best part though is I'm also going to share the slides, so those are also coming to you in an email as well. So don't feel like you have to jot down a ton of notes because those are all coming your way shortly. And I will save a few minutes for questions at the end, so be thinking about that as well. Now, I do realize that some of you might be watching this later on a recording and you might need to access the slides. So I'm including the QR code that you see there in a few different spots. So that way later, if you're watching a recording and you didn't receive the slides in an email, you can just scan that code and that will open up the slides for you. If you're watching me live, you of course are getting the slides in an email in just a few hours. Quick introduction. My name is Julie. I was a high school ELA teacher for 18 years. Now I've joined Angela on the teacher community team at Seesaw. I would love if you could find me on Twitter. I'm at EdTechJulieJ. Give me a follow because I share lots of tips, tricks, and ideas about Seesaw. And then of course you can connect with our whole team on Twitter at Seesaw. If you are brand new to Seesaw and you're just getting started, ideas.seesaw.me is a great place to visit. It has everything you need to get set up with Seesaw in your classroom. And then you can also take a look at upcoming webinars at web.seesaw.me/PDs. So we're talking tonight really specifically about some of my favorite or Seesaw's favorite apps to smash. You can see about 8 pictured on the screen. Again, don't try to write this down. I'll say them, but then they are typed in the notes of the slides that you'll be receiving later. So on the top row, left to right, you can see Padlet, Poplet, PicCollage or PicKids, and Book Creator. And then on the bottom row, left to right, it's Adobe Spark Video, Shadow Puppet, ThingLink, and Chatterpix. And the reason I put the icons there is because that way, if you're looking for them in the App Store, you'll know you have the right one when you see that icon that looks that similar. Now, we're talking mostly about 3 iOS apps tonight, but I know that sometimes if you're not an iPad user and your students are using Chromebooks or other computers or using the web for most of their creations, you can kind of feel left out. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you a list of some tools that we consider like device neutral, meaning they would work on multiple platforms. So I wanted to give you a long list of apps. Now, I'm going to assure you that these are apps I actually used in the classroom with my students. My students were in 12th grade, but I often did tech integration activities with younger students. So these are apps I really did use. And in the notes of this slide, so like later, if you're looking at the slide, in the notes of the slide, I made a comment about which of these tools are the web-based ones or the device neutral ones. So if you're thinking to yourself already, well, my students don't use iPads and I can't use some of the apps that Julie's going to talk about tonight, definitely take a look at this list. The Adobe apps are device neutral, as are obviously the Google tools. Book Creator is also web-based. And there's also some really cool websites like classtools.net. You see that on the left-hand side, and Big Huge Labs. Those are great tools that have multiple different things you can generate that you can app smash into Seesaw. So don't think that all of these are iOS apps, because I did include several things that you could use even if your students are on Chromebooks or mostly use the web. I don't want to get into too many specifics about all these different apps. I just wanted to make sure you had a nice list to look at later if you were trying to think about some other sites to use for your creation with your students. So back to the same 8 icons. It's these 3 that are circled that we're going to be talking about tonight: Shadow Puppet, PicCollage, and Chatterpix. So I'm going to give you some really specific ideas, borrowing a lot from our teacher community and telling you how teachers are using these apps with Seesaw. So I'm really excited to share some of that with you. Real quick, in case you think the term app smashing is kind of unfamiliar or seems intimidating, I think I probably did the first time I heard it. Really, I want to break it down for you and kind of let you know that it's maybe not that complicated. So Greg Kulowick, and you can see his Twitter handle there if you want to connect with him, he's probably the first person that coined the term, maybe clear back in 2013. App smashing just means basically using more than one app to complete your finished product. So with Seesaw being your last step, any of these other apps you're using, once you add it to Seesaw, you really are app smashing. So just really using more than one app to create a product, and your students are probably probably doing that already. So something I like to tell teachers when I'm giving them advice about app smashing is think about apps or tools that will save something to the camera roll. So if you're creating some kind of picture in some other app that's allowing you maybe say to blend images and text, look for apps that will let you save those images to your camera roll or just to your device, depending on what you call it, what device you're on. Because when you can save and download an image, then you can always add that to Seesaw. And I also tell teachers too, don't forget you can always use a screenshot. If you're not sure in certain tools or apps how to download or export the images, don't forget that you can just always take a screenshot and that's something that can then later be added to Seesaw. So make sure whatever devices your students are using, make sure they know the keyboard commands or the commands to do a screenshot. So I tried to put a couple of there, but you'll kind of have to think about what device your kids are using and make sure they know how to do it. I think that's a really useful digital skill for them to know how to take a screenshot and then of course to get that to Seesaw. So another way to think about it, like if you're thinking, I don't want to try app smashing, it's too intimidating, or I've never done it before, you probably actually have, and you don't even know it, because if you've taken a photo and then like cropped it or edited it somehow, or then you opened it in another application to make like a poster or a presentation, like if you've added a photo to a Google Slides presentation or PowerPoint, you're kind of app smashing already because you're using more than one tool to create that finished product. So it's not as intimidating as maybe you think. Like you can, you've probably already been doing it. If you're adding words on pictures or cropping photos and adding them to something, then you're well on your way. And your students probably are too. So I want to talk about the 3 that I've mentioned tonight. And then again, don't forget, I have some tips coming for you if you're not an iOS user. So just be patient. I have some other ideas for you if you're on Chromebooks. But I want to talk about PicCollage or PicKids. Sometimes I think of it as just like anything that maybe like in my first years of teaching that we would have done on poster board or butcher paper, you could kind of do now in PicCollage. So if you had assignments that you were giving your students where you were like, make a poster about this, make it like even a trifold poster if you were making those kinds of things. Sometimes students do it for book reports or some other projects. You could probably do it in PicCollage. PicCollage is just an app that's going to let you blend images and text. And we have teachers using PicCollage in really inventive ways. And so when you see the images on the next few slides, I do want to tell you that if you click on those in the slides later, you can see who they're credited to. These are things that teachers have like tweeted to us or shared with us on social media. So I did want to give them appropriate credit. But this is some of the ways that teachers are using PicCollage in class. You can see like a shape hunt or a scavenger hunt is a popular idea because you can open the app PicCollage and take your pictures right within the app, or you can take them in the camera and save them to the camera roll. So students are often walking around school or the playground looking for certain things and then taking the pictures and adding them to PicCollage. You can see that kind of pictured at the top right. Another thing as far as taking a picture of something and then adding words that we see a lot of students doing is book snaps. So taking a picture just of the page that they're reading and then adding their own annotations, whether it's, you can see like using a pen to underline or adding emojis or adding text blocks. You can do that in PicCollage too. So we see a lot of people doing that as well. Just literally taking a picture of what you're reading, the page in your self-selected reading book, for example, and then annotating it or adding some other things. So that would be a way that a lot of teachers are using PicCollage. And like I mentioned, whatever students are researching or working on or learning about, they could create a poster or a PicCollage. If you would have ever had students make a poster on a poster board, they can probably do it here in this app. So you're blending text and images, and again, saving to the camera roll and uploading to Seesaw. So you're starting in PicCollage, but ending in Seesaw. So here's a couple that teachers have shared with us. You can see one of those kind of in the middle of the screen is about an inventor or an invention. Maybe you have each student researching a different historical figure or a different inventor. And you can see at the top right, a student was researching different careers, like thinking about maybe future careers. So then they make a nice poster in PicCollage. You know, when I was teaching several years ago, when my students were one-to-one iPads, but before we had Seesaw, I was thinking we're making all these cool things like the PicCollages you see here, but where are we going to store them? Are they just going to live on the device, or how are we going to share them with family members or with others? So Seesaw is really a perfect solution for that, because students are creating some digital projects like this, but now they can add them to Seesaw to save and share. Here's another way to use PicCollage that I think is one of my favorite tips to share. If you have like a graphic organizer or a printable or a worksheet that you would like students to be able to write on or type on in PicCollage, what you can do, you can take a screenshot of it or a picture of it, save it as a JPEG or whatever. But once you have that image, and you can see it pictured at the left, I literally had a free printable there, and then I just saved it as an image file. I added it to PicCollage, and then if you can teach kids that, so they have this picture of something that basically looks like a picture of a worksheet. If they tap it, double tap it, PicCollage will set it as the background of the collage. And why that's helpful is because once something is the background, it's not going to move around. Like you can see the student with the inventor has like something that looks like a wooden background. That background isn't going to move. They can type their words on top of it and it's not wiggling around. So if I want this to just stay put and not move around, 2 taps, set it as the background. And now students can add these extra images or type these words, and this worksheet looking thing isn't moving around. So that's kind of cool too. And I'm getting lots better information from the student as far as blending the pictures and the text than I maybe would on paper. It's a little more engaging. And then of course, the best part is what I'm going to talk about next, which is the voice. So I think the best part of adding a PicCollage to Seesaw is adding like the voice, doing the voice recording. So in PicCollage, you can make some really beautiful posters or collages, great digital creations, but you're not going to hear voice. Once you add it to Seesaw, remember you're saving that PicCollage, adding it to Seesaw. Once you add it to Seesaw, you can click that microphone and let students read aloud from the text that's on the collage. They can explain their thinking or give more information. So they're adding voice to a collage. And so if you're picturing, like I've been joking about, all these posters on poster board maybe that my students would have been creating many years ago when I started teaching, those were never going to have a student's voice. Those were just going to be still posters that I could hang in the hall or whatever. But once you add them to Seesaw, you're actually getting to hear a little bit more about what the students are thinking or about their process. So that's kind of cool once you add a PicCollage to Seesaw. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about Chatterpix. So by contrast, PicCollage is creating posters, right? Like we pictured these. PicCollage is creating something that's like a digital poster. Chatterpix is creating like a movie file, like something that's going to animate a still picture, but it's going to make the mouth move. So it's not going to be a still image. It's going to be like a movie file where the mouth moves. And how this works is that you have students take a photo of something like a piece of artwork or just anything, and then they're basically making it come to life by drawing a mouth on that object and then recording their voice. So it works really great for artwork that students are creating or pictures of inanimate objects. And I'll show you a couple of good examples of that. So they basically just take their finger and they draw a mouth, and then it prompts them to record their voice. And then Chatterpix makes the little movie where the mouth starts moving to look as if the character is talking. So you see teachers using this a lot for, say, like hallway displays, like maybe students have created artwork that's going to hang outside of a classroom or on a bulletin board, but to make that come to life, students maybe create the Chatterpix, and then teachers add like the QR code of that movie or that file in Seesaw, add it to the poster. So here's an example I want to show you, and I'll pop out of my slides just so you can see kind of what it looks like. So you can tell that that was student artwork of Johnny Appleseed, which students in the primary grades, study periodically. So you probably know someone in your school who's studying Johnny Appleseed. And rather than just hanging up this still poster of Johnny Appleseed, this teacher had the students make a Chatterpix so the students could say some of the facts that they remembered about.
Hello, my name is Johnny Appleseed, and I'm really Johnny Chapman, and I have lots of family, and I love.
Okay, so you kind of get the idea. I'm not going to play through the whole thing, but I do have several links in this slide presentation, so you can take a look at some of these Chatterpix more closely here as you after you open the slides or when you receive the slides. I do want to tell you the term you're looking for in Chatterpix is export. It's not download the way it maybe would be in some other applications. So you're looking to export is what they call it, the movie file. And the instructions inside Chatterpix are pretty user-friendly and pretty intuitive. It's going to tell you to draw the mouth, and then it's going to keep pointing to things with arrows to tell you what to do next. But you're looking for that word export. Like I said, you want to get that to your camera roll because anything that lives on your camera roll can then go to Seesaw. Okay, and so here's a couple of other examples of Chatterpix. I think I said this already, but my preference in using Chatterpix is that students are taking inanimate objects and making them come to life, like the Johnny Appleseed drawing. This is my colleague Angela's student in kindergarten telling all the facts that she remembered about a leaf or about leaves. So she's animating a still picture of a leaf. Adding some voice to that. I also think it works great for historical figures, like projects about a certain politician or historical figure or author or like inventors like we talked about earlier. So I think that works. I don't think it's useful necessarily to take a picture of a student and then make that into a Chatterpix, because you could just take a video of a student talking. I mean, it's their voice, and so you could just make a video of that. But if it's something that wouldn't normally talk, like a leaf or a piece of artwork of Johnny Appleseed or a picture of a historical figure, then I think that makes sense to add some voice to it and make it a Chatterpix. Okay, and then the last app I want to talk about for a few minutes is Shadow Puppet EDU, and then be thinking about your questions because we will have a few minutes for those at the end tonight. Shadow Puppet is going to let you take multiple photos from your device. In this case, it's going to be on an iPad, and then you can narrate or record your voice over those images. You're going to save it as like a movie file and then upload it to Seesaw. So in this case, this is also from Angela's class. These are kindergarten students. They created some pumpkin artwork. So they each created this different pumpkin, like a pumpkin character. Whoops, let's see if I can get that to play. They created pumpkins, and then multiple students then are narrating this across multiple photos. So it's not one student uploading one photo. It's like going to scroll through essentially a bunch of different photos. And I'll give you a sense of what that's like.
Lauren's pumpkin is a vampire. Actually, pumpkin is a jack-o'-lantern. Logan's pumpkin is a ghost. Gabby's pumpkin is happy. Sydney B's pumpkin is scary.
Okay, and I wanted to let that play for a few seconds. So you kind of got the idea that it's going to go through multiple photos and have recording as those photos kind of scroll through. So that's a great way if you're thinking about something that you want to be kind of like a slideshow. That's a great way to add voice to a series of multiple pictures. Now, one of the most useful ways I think for teachers to be sharing shadow puppets is for like your digital newsletter. So if you want to show some pictures from the week and then audio record over that, like that's a great tool for a digital newsletter. And that's an example, again, from Angela's kindergarten. You can see it's a couple years old. If you want to hear her doing a weekly newsletter in Shadow Puppet, you can click on that later. The awesome thing about that, and this is a new development here in the last few months at Seesaw, you can actually now add a newsletter file like that to your announcements and messages in Seesaw. So we've had announcements and messages this school year in Seesaw. It looks like this. You're clicking this green add button and then send announcement, and you're picking your audience for your announcement or your message, I guess. And then before, like previously, you could type something and send it, but you couldn't attach anything, and now you can. So if you are going to create something like a shadow puppet, like Angela's example here, you can now attach that to an announcement. So it's not being saved permanently in the student's journal. Instead, it's just being sent to families like as communication or correspondence. So I'm really a big fan of that because I love the idea of giving parents kind of like a quick rundown of the week, like a weekly recap or a weekly newsletter, using a tool like Shadow Puppet. But it's nice that it's not saved with other student creations in the journal if you can send it out as an announcement. And I've done webinars on this very specific topic, just literally about how to send newsletters or how to send these attachments and announcements and messages. So definitely look for those on Seesaw's website or Help Center if you haven't seen those resources, because those could be useful for you. If this is kind of new info to you tonight, definitely want to take a look at those longer webinars specifically about that topic, or connect with me on Twitter and I can direct you to the right spot for that. But just a really cool development that now you can add like a Shadow Puppet newsletter like this right to your announcement if you have connected family members who are used to receiving announcements in Seesaw. Okay, I promised I wouldn't neglect you if you were a Chromebooks person. I wanted to just embed a video here. We've had a whole 30-minute webinar just on app smashing on Chromebooks. So if you're a Chromebooks person or a person who needs to use web-based tools and not iOS apps, and you're thinking, oh, there's nothing in this webinar for me, take a look at this 30-minute video when you get the slides, because Gina, our guest presenter, went through a ton of ideas that are great for students using Chromebooks. And if in a related note, if you're thinking, oh, I knew all of these ideas already and I want to hear some new things, maybe you could take a look at Shelly's webinar that's kind of at the bottom there, that second video that's embedded. She talked about using word clouds and text story for some app smashes in addition to Shadow Puppet. So if you want some completely different app smashing ideas that are all still pretty basic and simple, you can watch the video there. So these are just for you for later when you open the slides, some videos there for you. And of course, you could find these on YouTube as well. I want to open it up for questions, and I'll have to scan through the box to see what you're submitting here, and I'll have to do that really quickly. But as you're thinking about that and as you're typing, I'm going to put a couple more slides up on the screen. So be thinking of your questions and go ahead and type those. But I want to ask you, and this won't pop up on your screen until I conclude the webinar tonight, but when I'm done, a survey will pop up on your screen. And if you don't mind taking a minute to answer a few questions, it's really helpful for us. We value your feedback and we use that to help us pick future webinar topics and to get better. So we love your feedback. Be honest with us. And then the bonus is we randomly do draw a t-shirt winner every week from those responses. So remember, that's not going to pop up for a few more minutes till I'm done talking, but you will get that popping up on your screen. And if you don't mind, take a minute to answer those. And then I also want to remind you, if you and other teachers at your school are really loving Seesaw, don't forget you can also check out Seesaw for Schools. There's a link there at the top of the slide you can look at later. Seesaw for Schools is really useful when you're trying to assess student progress, and it's going to give you lots of like real-time data too about your students. So if that's something that's of interest to you, check out that link that's at the top of the screen. And I'm going to have this slide up here in just a minute, just different ways that you can connect with us on social media, but I'll put this back up on the screen to remind you that I'm open to taking a few questions. And of course, if you're watching me on a video later and you're not with us live, that QR code is how you can access the slides. Okay, be patient with me as I kind of scroll through these questions you've submitted, but I'll try to answer a few of them here tonight. PicCollage is iOS. So if you're using Chromebooks, you definitely want to watch Gina's webinar that I included there on one of the last few slides. She's going to give you some alternatives for that on Chromebooks. Thank you, Sherry. Patty, hi. App smashing is using more than one app to create a finished product. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning tonight. It's a term that was coined by Greg Kulowick, and it's just kind of talking about using more than one app to get a finished product. So anytime we're talking about Seesaw, Seesaw's like one of the apps you would use. Maybe you're going to add your voice recording, let's say in Seesaw, but you could use another app like PicCollage or Shadow Puppet to start a project. Rira, we do have an Android team that's really hard at work with some of these updates. So labels on Android, we know is something that people ask for a lot, and we have a team that's hard at work on that right now. Thank you, Glory. It's nice of you, and you guys just type in nice feedback for me. So as I'm scrolling through the questions, I'm seeing lots of nice comments, so I appreciate that. Okay, hi Kathy. So Chromebooks are going to have some different tools to use. Chromebooks are probably not going to use PicCollage, Chatterpix, or Shadow Puppet. Those are iOS apps. But go ahead and look at the list, the long bullet list that's on one of the slides. I have some device neutral tools on that list. And when you open the slides, you can see in the notes that I typed at the bottom which ones of those will be really great on the web. And then watch Gina's webinar that I embedded the video for on one of the last few slides. Thank you, Elena. That's nice feedback. Yes, Melissa, on PicCollage, students can search for images. They do like a web search. It's called, like it's a little magnifying glass icon, and they can type in a word and search for images. Yes, so they do image search within PicCollage if you want them to do that. You are welcome, Kathy. So Jennifer, Chromebooks are going to use the Google Play Store for some of their apps, and then anything that's web-based. So when I say device neutral tools, I basically mean something that you could use whether your students were on like a laptop, a computer, a Chromebook, or on an iPad. And so if you're specifically on a Chromebook or on a computer, you want to listen for terms like web-based tool or device neutral tool. So if it's not specifically just iOS, then it should work for you on a Chromebook. I'm just scanning through the questions here. Sorry if it sounds like I'm being slow. Yes, Glory, tweet me your question about private folders. I'd be happy to send some resources your way. Thank you, Robin. Yes, Charlotte, great example. So Charlotte is saying that she has a chart she wants students to fill out. If it's saved as an image or a photo, yep, if you take a photo of it, put it in PicCollage, and then remember in PicCollage, students can two tap it, like double tap it and save it as the background. Or if you wanted to bypass PicCollage altogether, your students could do it right in Seesaw. But if you're wanting them to do it in PicCollage, you can double tap that image to set it as the background of your collage, and then it's not wiggling around, and students can add more images on top of it. Karen is asking an interesting question about adding music. So like if children are singing a song in class, you could have them record that as a background to a shadow puppet. Anytime, any app that's going to open a microphone, you could have them singing. So in Seesaw, you could have them singing, or in Shadow Puppet. We do have a lot of music teachers who use Seesaw, and they put videos of their students performing. Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, Nan, Safe Search I think is a great choice, and I used photosforclass.com I think a lot when I was in the classroom. I think I said the website correctly. Just scanning through the remaining questions. I don't have too many left here. Let me see. Nan, as far as like the image searches in PicCollage, you might look at PicKids more specifically than PicCollage if you're concerned about that. Yes, Rocio, the videos from YouTube can go in Seesaw, so you can add a link to anything in Seesaw, like Seesaw will take a link for sure. Okay, Lisa, this is a great question. So we're seeing a lot of hallway or bulletin board displays where teachers are displaying work that's from Seesaw. And one of the ways they do that and make it really interactive for the viewers of the bulletin board or the hallway display is they print the QR code in Seesaw, right? And Seesaw is going to generate a QR code for anything, but you just click those three dots and you can generate a QR code for any post. So like if your students, like the Johnny Appleseed example that I showed, that's exactly how that teacher did it. So like in art class, every student made a watercolor of Johnny Appleseed, let's say, and they're all hanging on a bulletin board. But as part of that unit of study, they also made a Chatterpix where they recorded the voice like you saw in these slides. And so when the teacher hit export in Chatterpix to get the recording or the movie file on the camera roll of the iPad, and then put that into Seesaw, then once that is in Seesaw, by clicking the three dots on the Seesaw post, it's going to generate a QR code, which can then be printed and cut out and attached to that watercolor hanging in the hallway. So like if people are walking by, they can scan it and hear that come to life. So If you look on Twitter or your grade level specific Facebook group, I think you're going to see lots of examples of this. I've seen a lot this week already, for example, of the first grade habitat project, like in first grades in a lot of different places, they're learning about animal habitats. And so students are creating really great artwork, old school, not like digital files, but they're creating posters and displays. And then teachers are putting QR codes there out in the hallway so people can scan it. Lisa, if you have any other questions, just connect with me on Twitter. Okay, scanning through a couple more questions. You are welcome, Sherry. Thanks for the feedback. Oh, you guys are too nice. All the last 4 things I clicked were just positive feedback and compliments, so I really appreciate it. Let me see what I have for you here before we go. We talked about the survey. We talked about Seesaw for Schools. This is what I wanted to leave you with before we conclude. Definitely connect with us on social media. You can see that picture towards the right side of the screen. And like I was saying, we have a really generous community. And so if you need more ideas about how teachers are really using these ideas in their classrooms, don't hesitate to reach out to your grade level specific Facebook groups, or definitely see what people are posting on Twitter and even some of the things that we post on Instagram too, because I think you'll find a lot of great ideas. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you again in a webinar real soon. Bye-bye.